What you're about to hear is not just a story. It's a chilling reminder that even in the most ordinary moments, danger can find you. These are real-style horror experiences meant to keep you up at night. This is Cryptid HQ. Let's begin. After Christmas Eve, Point Pleasant changed for me. It wasn't just about one creature anymore. It was about the way people moved, the way they looked at each other, like they all knew something they couldn't say out loud. I started noticing patterns. At the diner, certain conversations stopped when I walked in. The laughter that once filled the place had dried up, and the eyes, people wouldn't meet mine anymore. Like they could see it on me, like they knew I'd been chosen. It was the night after Christmas, when my neighbor, Henry, knocked on my door. Henry was in his late 50s, ex-military, the kind of man who lived alone and didn't waste words. We'd nodded at each other a few times across our yards, but never spoken much. That night, though, he looked shaken. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and said, "You've seen him, hasn't you?" I froze. He didn't need me to answer. He saw it in my face. Henry sat down heavily at the table and rubbed his temples like he hadn't slept in days. He never just picks one. He picks a town, a cluster, and then he watches. Always watches, until something happens. I asked him what he meant. He looked at me with hollow eyes and whispered, "The bridge wasn't the first. It won't be the last." 13 years, boy. 13 years, and he always takes something with him. Henry left after that, but his words stuck to me like a fever. He always takes something with him. It rattled in my head the next morning when I walked through town. Main Street was quiet, too quiet for the holidays. Shops had closed early, blinds pulled tight. Even the kids who normally sledded on the hill by the church were nowhere to be seen. I walked past the post office and noticed something strange. Every telephone pole had a flyer tacked to it. Missing pets, dogs, cats, even a few birds, each with the same message underneath. Vanished without a sound. I stopped at one flyer and stared at the photo of a black Labrador, and that's when I realized the date. All of them had disappeared in the last 3 weeks. That night, I heard scratching at my back door. Slow, deliberate, the way claws would test wood. I froze in the living room, lights off, heart pounding in my throat. The scratching stopped. Then came the knock. 3 slow, heavy thuds. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a full minute of silence, I finally worked up the courage to peek through the blinds, and what I saw made my stomach collapse. It wasn't him. It was Henry, standing in the pouring rain, his eyes wide, his lips trembling. I opened the door, ready to drag him inside, but he took a step back. "Don't. He'll follow. He always follows if you open the door." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, Henry was found dead in his house. The official word was heart failure, but people whispered something else. They said his body was twisted, his face locked in terror, his eyes wide open, as if he'd been staring at something no human should ever see. And on his window pane, burned into the glass, were 2 faint circles, the size of glowing red eyes. I told myself to leave. Pack up. Move on. Get the hell out before whatever happened 13 years ago happened again. But I couldn't, because something deep inside me, some terrible pull, needed to know, needed to understand why he came back, and why he chose us. New Year's Eve arrived. The whole town felt like it was holding its breath. Normally, Main Street would have been lit up with string lights and fireworks. But this year, nothing. Shutters closed, businesses dark. Only the church bells rang at midnight, echoing like a funeral song. I stayed up, pacing my house, waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, it did. At 12:47 a.m., my power went out. The hum of the refrigerator died. The heater went silent. Only the sound of wind clawing at the walls remained. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, my body tense, every sense sharpened. And then, the sound. Wings. Not flapping. The candle flickered. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting like long, clawed fingers. Then came the whisper. Not a voice, not words, but a pressure in my ears, like someone leaning too close, breathing into my skull. It said nothing, but I understood everything. It wasn't just watching me. It was learning me, studying me the way a predator studies its prey. I thought it would end with sunrise, but when morning came, I realized something terrifying. There were no tracks outside, no broken shingles, no sign anything had ever touched the roof, except for the candle, because on the table where it sat, wax had spilled down unnaturally, forming 2 perfect circles, 2 eyes staring up at me. The following week, more people vanished. Not pets this time. People. A teenager on his way home from basketball practice. A woman who worked nights at the grocery store. An older man who walked his dog every morning at 6 a.m. Each gone without a trace. And every time, someone swore they saw glowing red eyes nearby the night before. The sheriff's office didn't even try to investigate. Not seriously. Because deep down, they knew, we all knew. It wasn't a man, it wasn't an animal. It was him, the silent watcher. I reached my breaking point on January 6th. That night, I had the dream again, except it wasn't a dream this time. I woke in my bed, sweat soaking the sheets. The room was dark, too dark. Even the street lights outside had gone out. And then I heard it. A voice, faint inside my head. 13 years, 13 eyes, 13 souls. I shot upright, clutching my chest, gasping for air. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, and then, at the corner of my room, 2 red eyes opened. Not outside, not in a dream, but inside my bedroom. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just sat there, paralyzed, while those eyes bore into me. And then, slowly, a shape unfolded. Wings spread so wide, they scraped the ceiling. A body too tall to fit the room, but somehow folding into it. The Mothman, the silent watcher, standing at the edge of my bed. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just leaned forward until those glowing eyes filled my vision completely. And then everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning. The eyes were gone. The figure was gone. But burned into the wall above my bed was a mark, 2 circles, connected by a single line, like a primitive drawing of eyes watching over me. And beneath it, carved deep into the plaster, was a single word: wait. When I woke beneath that word, wait, carved into the wall above my bed, I realized something chilling. He wasn't finished. He wasn't done with me. He was waiting. For the next several days, I felt like a prisoner inside my own house. Every sound outside carried weight. Every creak of the floorboards made me jolt awake at night. The red eyes didn't return to my bedroom, but I still felt them. In the corners of my vision, in the mirror's reflection, in the black glass of the TV when it was turned off. Always there, always watching. The town had grown quieter, if that was even possible. By mid-January, Main Street was nearly abandoned. Shops closed, gas stations shuttered early. Even the church pews sat empty. It wasn't fear anymore. It was acceptance. The kind of silence you hear at a funeral, when people already know the end has come. One night, I went to the bar, one of the last places still open. The air smelled like whiskey and defeat. Only a handful of locals sat scattered at the tables, eyes down, drinks untouched. I slid onto a stool, and the bartender, a heavy-set man named Carl, poured me a glass without a word. For a while, the silence hung heavy, but then Carl leaned close and whispered, "He's not just here for us. He's here for something bigger." I asked him what he meant. Carl's eyes darted to the darkened windows before he spoke again. The old folks used to say, "He ain't a monster. He's a signal, a sign that something worse is coming. That's why he waits. That's why he watches. He's not the end. He's the warning." That word again. Warning. But if he was a warning, why was he inside my house? Why was he watching me? I left the bar, more unsettled than ever. 2 nights later, the storm rolled in. The kind of storm that feels unnatural. The air too warm, the sky too black, the thunder too hollow. Rain poured down in violent sheets, rattling the windows and shaking the walls. And that's when it happened. The sirens. The old emergency sirens that hadn't been used since the bridge collapse decades earlier. They screamed to life across the town, howling through the storm. I ran to the window, heart racing, and that's when I saw them. People, neighbors, strangers, families, all walking into the street, silent, unblinking, moving toward the river. I threw on a coat and followed. The rain stung my face. The sirens clawed at my ears, but still, I walked. Everyone gathered at the banks of the Ohio River. Hundreds of us, standing shoulder to shoulder, staring across the dark water. No one spoke, no one moved, and then the wind shifted. Branches snapped in the woods behind us. The air grew heavy, thick enough to choke on, and through the storm, through the lightning and rain, he came. The Mothman, the silent watcher. He didn't fly, he hovered. Wings stretched wide, body towering above the treetops, eyes burning through the night like twin suns of blood. The entire crowd gasped, but not in fear, in recognition, like they had all been waiting for this moment. He hovered there, silent, wings unmoving, staring at us. And then something even worse happened. One by one, people dropped to their knees, like worshippers before an altar. I stood frozen, the rain pooling at my feet, unable to breathe, because I realized something horrifying in that moment. He wasn't just watching, he was choosing. A young man in the crowd screamed suddenly, clutching his chest. He collapsed into the mud, writhing, gasping, before falling still. The people around him didn't help, didn't even flinch. They just kept staring. Another scream tore through the night, this time from an older woman. Her body twisted unnaturally, as if invisible hands were crushing her. Then silence, and then another, and another, until the sound of screams blended with the storm itself. I turned to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My chest tightened, my breath caught in my throat, and for one brief, merciless second, his eyes locked on me. I felt the weight of centuries pour into me, the knowledge of something far beyond human understanding. It wasn't just death, it wasn't just tragedy, it was inevitability. And then the sirens cut off, the storm stopped, silence. When I came to, the crowd was gone, the riverbank empty. No bodies, no footprints, just me. standing alone in the mud, soaked to the bone, shaking like a leaf. Had it really happened? Or had I gone completely insane? The next morning, I looked for answers, but the town carried on as if nothing had happened. Shops reopened. People walked their dogs. Kids played in the yard. Like the storm, the sirens, the mass gathering, none of it had existed. Pouring me a drink. That night, I wrote everything down. Every detail, every sighting, every whisper. I thought if I could just put it into words, I'd make sense of it. But when I finished and looked back through the pages, my stomach dropped because some of the words weren't mine. Scrawled between the lines, jagged and uneven, were 3 phrases I never wrote. 13 years. Wait. He sees you. I dropped the journal onto the floor, heart racing, skin crawling, because no one else had been in my house. No one else had touched that book. And yet, the writing was there. The silent watcher was writing through me. It was nearly 3 in the morning when I realized the night hadn't gone quiet at all. It had shifted. The cicadas, which had been buzzing relentlessly earlier, had vanished into silence. The wind that had carried through the trees just minutes before now seemed frozen in place. I could almost feel the air tighten around me, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. And that's when I knew something was there. I stood in the middle of that dirt road, my flashlight beam shaking across the tree line. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to turn back and run to the safety of my car. But something else pulled me deeper. The same pull I had felt 13 years ago. The story said the Mothman returned every 13 years. If that was true, then maybe, just maybe, this was the night. I took a cautious step forward, the gravel crunching softly under my boots. The woods ahead were darker than night itself, swallowing the beam of my flashlight as though light didn't belong there. And then I saw it. Not clearly, not yet, but enough to freeze me in place. A shadow, taller than any man, moved between the trees. It didn't walk like a person, not even like an animal. It glided, its wings massive and curved, brushed silently against the branches without making a sound. I whispered to myself, almost involuntarily. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears, and every beat felt like it was counting down to something inevitable. That's when it screamed. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard before. Part shriek, part metallic grind, part low-frequency hum that rattled in my chest. It wasn't meant for human ears. I'm sure of that. My flashlight flickered violently, then died altogether, leaving me in absolute darkness. And in that blackness, I saw them, 2 glowing red eyes, hovering 6 feet above the ground, burning like embers in the night. I don't know why I didn't run. Maybe my legs refused to work. Maybe my mind wanted proof of what my heart already knew. The glowing eyes drifted closer, one slow step at a time. When it was close enough, I swear I felt the air move, as if its wings had stretched wide. And then, just like that, it stopped. It stood there, maybe 10 feet away, watching me with those crimson eyes that seemed to pierce straight through bone. I remembered my phone in my pocket. Slowly, shaking, I pulled it out and swiped to the camera, praying the screen's light wouldn't anger the thing in front of me. I raised it, aimed at those burning eyes, and snapped a picture. The flash exploded across the woods, and in that instant, I saw it. Its body was impossibly thin, its skin a mottled gray that shimmered like stone, its wings stretched wider than my car, feathers, or something like feathers, hanging ragged and torn, its face. No, not a face. Something inhuman, like the beak of a bird fused with the structure of a man. I don't even remember turning, but I was suddenly sprinting back down that dirt road, tripping over roots, branches clawing at my arms. My chest burned, my throat tightened, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. When I finally reached my car, I slammed the door, jammed the key into the ignition, and sped off down that winding road. My headlights flicked over the trees, and for just a split second, I saw those red eyes again, following me through the branches. But when I looked again, they were gone. The photograph. It wasn't until I was home, locked in the false safety of 4 walls, that I dared to check my phone. My hands shook as I pulled up the camera roll, scrolling to the last photo I had taken. The screen went black. No image, no corrupted file, nothing, just black. But the metadata told a different story. The file was there. The size was there. The timestamp was correct. But the photo itself had been erased, swallowed into nothing, as if something didn't want proof of its existence to survive. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of my old house felt heavier. Every shadow seemed to move. But it wasn't until just before dawn that I realized the worst part, because as I turned over in bed, my eyes caught something in the corner of my room. At first, I thought it was just the outline of the coat rack. But then, the outline shifted. 2 faint glowing embers stared back at me from the darkness. I froze. My body locked up, unable to move, unable to breathe. And just like that, they blinked out. When I finally got the courage to turn on the light, the corner was empty. deep down, I knew. The Mothman hadn't just returned, he had found me. And now, just like the legends always whispered, something terrible was coming. This wasn't the end of the story. If the Mothman truly came back every 13 years, then his reappearance wasn't random. It was a warning. And if the Silent Watcher was in my home, it meant I wasn't just telling a story anymore. I was living it.